Okay, let's dive right in. Imagine this. Arguably one of the most powerful figures on Wall Street didn't climb his way to the top within the established banking hierarchy.
Right.
His path to empire actually began after he was unexpectedly fired from a major firm.
Yeah, completely sideways entry almost.
He then took that moment of rejection and used it to build the very foundational system that much of global finance relies on today. It's a story that kind of flips the traditional narrative.
It really does. It turns this uh, devastating setback into the catalyst for, well, unprecedented success.
It's a completely counterintuitive starting point, isn't it?
Absolutely. When we think of Wall Street titans, we usually picture, decades spent ascending the ranks, navigating the politics, mastering the existing
It's
structures.
the usual path.
Exactly. But the material we're exploring here presents Michael Bloomberg's journey as one about identifying a fundamental flaw in that system,
Uh-huh.
being pushed out, and then having the foresight and the drive to completely redesign how that system operates from the outside.
And that unexpected origin is precisely what makes this deep dive so fascinating. Based on the stack of sources we've pulled together for this exploration, articles, research, biographical details, our mission is to unpack the extraordinary journey of Michael Bloomberg.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to trace his path from that pivotal moment of being let go by a powerful firm to the creation of the, well, ubiquitous Bloomberg Terminal
Can't escape it now.
and the subsequent building of a global media empire that is now utterly stitched into the fabric of the financial world.
And this isn't just about, chronicling the accumulation of wealth or discussing a public figure's achievements from afar.
Right, we want to get under the hood.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The deeper purpose here is to really get into the engine room, to understand the underlying mechanics, the principles, the decisions that fueled this level of impact. The sources paint a picture built on rigorous discipline, remarkable resilience, keen foresight, and just a relentless bias for action, often unconventional action.
And for you, listening right now, the payoff here isn't just absorbing facts about a billionaire. Think of this as a practical roadmap, maybe, a look at the operational blueprint of someone who fundamentally altered a global industry.
Yeah, the how.
What you'll gain are insights into how durable, impactful success is built not just through luck or inherited advantage, though those can play a role, but through unwavering consistency, the capacity to turn setbacks into strategic opportunities, and a purposeful, action-oriented approach to building something of lasting value.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're navigating your own challenges, trying to build a business, or simply looking to understand the forces that shape our world, the insights here on discipline, resilience, creating essential value, they're incredibly relevant.
It's less a biography and more an applied study, really. How a specific mindset and set of habits can yield truly outsized results when applied consistently to a significant problem.
So let's dive into the material.
Let's do it.
Okay, so the sources immediately highlight something fundamental about Michael Bloomberg's approach, something that feels like the absolute bedrock upon which everything else was constructed: discipline.
Yeah, it jumps right out.
It's described not as like a fleeting trait or occasional burst of motivation, but as a brutal, almost ruthless simplicity, a systematic way of channeling energy and attention day in and day out.
That's a crucial distinction made in the material, isn't it? Discipline, in this context, it isn't about relying on feeling motivated.
Right, motivation fades.
Exactly. Motivation comes and goes. Discipline is about establishing routines and systems that ensure your energy and focus are consistently applied where they are needed most, regardless of mood, circumstance, or, how convenient it might be in the moment.
It's about the choice.
It's about making the conscious choice to operate at an exceptionally high standard every single day.
And the example that is consistently used across the material, the one that has become almost legendary, is his iconic 5:30 a.m. wake-up call.
Yes, the 5:30 start.
Why that specific time? The sources frame it not just as getting up early, but as a deliberate, almost competitive act, a refusal to allow anyone else to get a head start on the day, particularly in the intense world of finance.
Exactly. The 5:30 a.m. wake-up isn't passive, it's active. The material details his immediate actions. The first hour dedicated to consuming news and information from around the globe,
Soaking it all in.
followed by physical exercise and then mental preparation for the day ahead. This isn't relaxation, it's strategic preparation time. ensuring he is already processing information, sharpening his mind and body before most people are even out of bed, let alone thinking about their desks.
It's about gaining an edge on the calendar itself.
Precisely.
And what's truly remarkable and heavily emphasized in the sources is the sheer consistency of this routine. This 5:30 a.m. start, the disciplined approach to information and physical activity, he maintained this for decades. Through the explosive growth of his company, through 3 terms as the mayor of one of the world's largest cities, and continuing into his 70s and beyond. That level of non-negotiable consistency across such varied and demanding roles is, frankly, mind-boggling.
It really is. And the material underscores that this consistency isn't just a personal habit. It's a fundamental element of his leadership and the culture he built.
Setting the tone.
Exactly. If the founder, the person at the very top, is consistently demonstrating this level of discipline, rigor, preparedness daily, it sends an unmistakable message about the standards expected throughout the entire organization. It sets the tone for a culture of relentless execution and precision.
You mentioned physical activity. The sources detail the role of the gym, describing it not just as physical fitness, but as a necessary practice for resetting mental bandwidth.
That's a key insight from the material,
Yeah.
Bloomberg views physical health and mental clarity as intrinsically linked. In the high-stakes, rapid-fire world of finance, where decisions are made under immense pressure, tight deadlines, a clear, sharp mind isn't a luxury.
It's a necessity.
It is an absolute necessity. The sources starkly contrast this mental clarity with a foggy brain, which is identified as a significant liability in such an environment. This highlights how his physical discipline directly underpins his mental performance and, well, his competitive edge.
And that clarity is essential for how he approaches time, which the sources portray him as mastering with legendary strictness.
Oh yeah, time management.
Avoiding unnecessary meetings, cutting conversations short if they aren't driving immediate action. Ruthless.
The material is very clear on this. Bloomberg treats time as the most finite and valuable resource available, especially his own attention. His approach to managing it is described as ruthlessly efficient.
Down to the minute.
Calendars are optimized, often scheduled down to the minute, and there is an expectation that others operate with the same level of precision. The descriptions of meetings at Bloomberg LP are telling they are rare, typically very short, entirely focused on the topic at hand.
No small talk.
Zero small talk, and geared solely towards driving immediate execution. This isn't merely about saving minutes. It's about concentrating collective attention on productive outcomes.
There's also the element of obsessive information consumption we touched on, devouring reports, updates, news across every relevant sector.
Yeah, constantly scanning.
The sources highlight that he saw information itself as the real source of power, even before the terminal product existed.
Yes, the material uses a powerful analogy, describing him as studying news and data like a battlefield map.
Wow.
This wasn't passive reading. It was an intense, active process of analysis, looking for patterns, anticipating market shifts, understanding the competitive and economic landscape in granular detail. This relentless commitment to being comprehensively informed is another layer of his discipline.
Making sure he always had the edge.
Ensuring he always had the most complete and current picture possible to inform his decisions. It contrasts sharply with how most people might, casually consume news.
And this culture of information flow and discipline has a very visible physical manifestation in the famously open office environment at Bloomberg.
Right, the open floor.
Where he sits directly among his employees, not in some corner suite.
And the sources explain that this design isn't merely symbolic or, for PR. Its purpose is highly functional, to facilitate rapid information exchange, to stay grounded, and to remain acutely aware of what's happening across the company in real time.
Laptop open, ears open.
His laptop is open, his ears are tuned to the conversations around him. It powerfully reinforces the idea that discipline and engagement aren't just personal habits for the founder, they are woven into the operational culture of the organization. Leaders, starting with Bloomberg himself, are visibly present, working smart, staying sharp.
Setting that tone again.
Setting a tone of relentless precision for everyone.
The material also delves into his perspective on work-life balance, presenting a view that challenges the traditional separation, suggesting more of a life integration.
This is a key point in understanding his drive, I think. The sources indicate he doesn't view his work and personal life as separate spheres that need to be, balanced against each other.
It's all one thing.
Instead, he sees his values, goals, and work as fundamentally aligned. He's often described as being always on, not out of an unhealthy addiction to work, but because he is, as the material puts it, wired to build. His life is his mission, and his work is a primary expression of that mission. It's a deeply integrated existence where personal purpose and professional activity are almost indistinguishable.
So, the core takeaway from this deep dive into his discipline seems to be that his competitive edge isn't derived from some secret hack or shortcut.
No silver bullet here?
It's the result of the consistent, disciplined mastery of fundamental practices, executed relentlessly day after day, often starting before anyone else has begun.
Exactly. Discipline is presented as the quiet, unsung force behind the visible success. It lacks flash, but it sharpens decision-making, protects that invaluable resource of time, and positions you consistently ahead of the competition.
It's about out-executing.
The sources suggest that success, in Bloomberg's model, comes less from being the single smartest person and more from simply out-executing others, reliably and precisely, day in and day out, starting with that commitment before dawn. Consistency, in this view, is the ultimate differentiator.
That's a powerful perspective shift, making success feel less about inherent genius and more about deliberate, sustained effort. So, thinking about this for your own efforts right now, what part of this discipline resonates most deeply with you? Where could applying consistent, deliberate effort day after day, starting perhaps even slightly earlier than you do now, make a significant difference in achieving your goals?
It really shifts the focus from just wishing for results to actually building the habits that produce them.
And that foundation of discipline becomes even more extraordinary when you consider the defining moment that forced him onto his independent path. The jarring experience of getting fired.
Ah, yes, the Phoenix moment, as it's sometimes called. The material vividly describes his career trajectory leading up to that point at Salomon Brothers. He joined in '66 Harvard Business School grad
Wait, classic path.
and rose through the ranks with remarkable speed. By the '70s, he was a partner, overseeing critical areas like equity trading and, significantly, information systems.
Hey, Eric.
He had dedicated 15 years to this firm, reaching a very senior and influential position at one of Wall Street's indisputable powerhouses.
15 years invested, a partner, seemingly secure and at the peak of his career within the firm. And then, 1981, Salomon Brothers gets acquired.
The merger hammer falls.
As often happens in acquisitions, new leadership came in with plans to streamline, and the sources describe it with blunt simplicity. Just like that, he was out. Fired.
It must have been an abrupt and undoubtedly painful end to a major chapter of his professional life. He received a $10 million severance package.
Which was huge money back then.
Huge. We must remember that was an immense sum in 1981, equivalent to well over $30 million today, adjusted for inflation. The conventional, comfortable path for someone in that position with that kind of financial cushion would have been to retire, maybe manage investments,
Play golf.
maybe join another established firm in a senior role. But the material makes it clear that Bloomberg didn't even seriously consider those options.
Instead, he took that $10 million and made a massive, unconventional bet.
A huge bet.
He used it as seed capital to build something completely new, something that, in hindsight, the entire financial world desperately needed but hadn't really articulated.
And the idea for this new venture stemmed directly from a fundamental problem he had observed and grappled with while he was working at Salomon Brothers.
He saw it from the inside.
Exactly. The sources repeatedly highlight this major flaw in the existing system. Financial data was fragmented, incredibly difficult to access quickly, delayed, and cumbersome to analyze effectively. Traders, analysts, executives, they were constantly making high-stakes, multi-million, billion-dollar decisions based on information that was either outdated, incomplete, or buried across disparate systems and paper reports. It was chaos.
So he saw the inefficiency, the delay, the inherent disadvantage of this scattered data environment from the inside, experiencing its limitations daily.
Right. And the sources point to this frustration crystallizing into a simple yet revolutionary question. What if we could create a single, real-time data system that puts all the critical market information in one place, instantly searchable, completely customizable, and continuously updated?
Simple question, massive implications.
That seemingly simple question became the driving force behind the company he founded, with his severance money, in October 1981, initially called Innovative Market Systems. The goal was audacious for the era. Design and build a terminal that would provide instant, accurate access to a vast array of financial data.
Everything you needed.
Real-time bond and equity prices, interest rates, news headlines, earnings reports, economic indicators, everything a finance professional needed, presented in a unified, easily manipulable format available literally at their fingertips.
And the sources provide crucial context for the technological landscape of the early 1980s. This was a world without the internet as we know it.
Pre-internet world, yeah.
Data collection was largely manual, relying on telex machines, paper reports flown or couriered between offices, slow, scrolling tickers that were inherently delayed. The idea of a single, integrated, real-time digital platform for financial data wasn't just an incremental improvement.
Not just tweaking the system.
So the material frames it as a complete reinvention of the existing process.
And as is often the case with genuinely disruptive ideas, it was initially met with significant skepticism and difficulty securing early clients.
People probably thought he was crazy.
The sources note that he struggled. He was a new company with no established brand, no legacy, just a small team, a prototype, and his unwavering conviction in the need for this system. Getting potential customers to trust a startup with their mission-critical data flow was a major hurdle.
But then came the breakthrough.
The pivotal moment, the turning point that provided the necessary breakthrough, was securing Merrill Lynch as the first client.
Such a huge name.
The sources emphasize how significant this was. Merrill Lynch was one of the biggest, most respected names on Wall Street. Their agreement to be the first customer and place an initial order for 20 terminals provided immediate credibility.
Just getting that first yes was huge.
But the deal went far beyond just a client relationship. Merrill Lynch also made a crucial strategic investment, taking a 30% stake in Bloomberg's fledgling company.
Wow, so they put money in too.
This investment provided not only essential capital to continue development and scale up, but perhaps even more importantly, the sources highlight the immense validation it provided. Overnight, he transformed from being perceived as, a guy with an interesting idea to having the direct financial backing and endorsement of a Wall Street giant. That partnership gave him instant momentum and removed a significant barrier to entry.
And so, building on that foundation, in December 1982, the first Bloomberg Terminal was finally launched.
The birth of the box.
The sources detail what made it so different from what existed before. It wasn't just about speed, though that was critical. It was also about user control and empowerment.
Yes, the difference was profound. Users could customize their screens to display the specific data points most relevant to their work, drill down into granular detail, set alerts for market movements, and perform complex analysis directly on the terminal itself.
Putting the power in their hands.
It gave them a level of visibility, control, and confidence they simply didn't have with previous tools. And, as the sources repeatedly stress as paramount in finance, it saved them enormous amounts of time by streamlining their workflow.
Because, as the material concisely puts it, in the intensely competitive world of finance, whoever sees the truth first wins.
That was the core insight that drove the terminal's design and value proposition. By providing accurate, real-time data instantly and making it easy to analyze, the terminal armed users with that crucial truth faster than their competitors. It didn't just provide information, it provided a competitive edge based on speed of access and analysis.
And the sources also highlight a less obvious but significant factor in his success. His background wasn't purely technical or purely financial in the traditional sense. He had a cross-functional perspective, part engineer, part trader, part systems thinker.
That blend was his superpower, wasn't it?
Oh.
It allowed him to identify and frame the problem of inefficient data flow at Salomon Brothers, not just as a technical challenge or a trading inconvenience, but as a fundamental systemic bottleneck that required a holistic solution.
Seeing the whole picture.
He saw how the fragmented nature of information hindered the entire operation and had the vision to conceive of a unified, integrated system. While others might have resigned themselves to scattered data as just, the way things were,
Just part of the job.
he saw it as a critical problem demanding a complete redesign.
So his firing from Salomon Brothers, while likely devastating at the moment, is framed in the sources not as a moment of failure, but as the essential pivot point, the redirection that freed him to pursue this radical idea.
Exactly. He took that $10 million severance package and made a profound bet on an unseen future where integrated real-time data would be king.
A future he was uniquely positioned to create because of his unique blend of experience.
It's a powerful case study in seeing leverage and loss. Instead of allowing rejection to define him, he used it as the fuel and capital to reinvent the very system that had cast him out. The sources strongly imply that getting fired wasn't ruin. It was the unexpected grant of freedom required to build something orders of magnitude greater than anything he could have achieved staying within the established structure.
Which leads to that powerful lesson. Sometimes the rejection you fear the most, or the setback that feels most debilitating, is actually the redirection you need most.
Yeah, it forces you down a different path.
It can be the catalyst that forces you onto a path you might never have otherwise considered, leading to possibilities you couldn't have imagined. How have you, listening to this, reacted to setbacks in your own career or projects? Can you look back at past rejections and see how they might have inadvertently redirected you towards new and valuable opportunities?
It definitely forces a reevaluation of how we perceive failure, doesn't it?
And from that pivotal moment and the launch of the first unit, the Bloomberg Terminal began its ascent to becoming the engine room, the core invention that would underpin a global empire.
Absolutely. When the first terminals rolled out in late '82, the sources described them with blunt accuracy. They weren't visually stunning.
Not pretty.
They featured a clunky keyboard and an orange-on-black display, kind of reminiscent of early computing interfaces. But aesthetics were secondary to their core superpower, providing reliable, real-time financial data with unprecedented speed and depth.
Function over form.
Totally. They were directly addressing the massive inefficiencies that plagued the financial world pre-terminal. The sources detail the cumbersome, manual, and slow methods of data collection and distribution that were standard at the time, reliance on telex, physical newspapers, and reports with inherent delay.
Painfully slow.
Scattered proprietary systems that didn't talk to each other, and constant phone calls to gather disparate pieces of information. It was a fragmented and inefficient mess that actively hindered decision-making.
And the terminal offered the definitive solution.
A single, streamlined device that seamlessly integrated not just market data, but also powerful analytical tools, relevant news feeds, and eventually its own messaging system. As we mentioned, the initial order and subsequent investment from Merrill Lynch were absolutely critical.
That initial validation.
They not only provided the necessary capital, but also the market validation needed to gain traction in a skeptical industry.
The early capabilities of the terminal were truly groundbreaking for the time and environment. Being able to access real-time bond and equity prices from global markets, perform complex comparative analytics instantly, pull up instant economic indicators, customize screens with personal alerts.
All in one box.
This level of integrated functionality in a single device was revolutionary.
It fundamentally changed the professional's interaction with information. They were no longer passive recipients of delayed, partial data. They became empowered decision-makers who could actively analyze, manipulate, and react to market movements with speed and confidence. The sources repeatedly emphasize how this empowered individuals and entire trading desks.
And the growth trajectory tells the story of its increasing indispensability. The sources note hitting 10,000 installations by 1991.
Decent start.
And just 6 years later, by 1997, that number had exploded to over 75,000 terminals deployed across more than 90 countries, serving a user base exceeding 140,000 financial professionals.
Exponential growth.
This rapid adoption wasn't limited to investment banks. It spread to hedge funds, government agencies, central banks, corporations, anyone who needed to make critical decisions based on financial data.
The terminal became so deeply embedded in Wall Street culture and operations that the sources highlight a fascinating point. It became standard practice for firms to train new hires on using the Bloomberg Terminal first,
Like learning the alphabet.
sometimes even prioritizing that practical fluency over a theoretical finance degree. It wasn't just a tool anymore, it was becoming a prerequisite for financial literacy, a core competency in the industry.
And he continued to innovate within the system, famously building a secure, proprietary instant messaging system years before mainstream tools like Slack or Teams became common.
That messaging feature was incredibly insightful. It didn't just add a communication layer. It created a closed, real-time, and confidential ecosystem for financial professionals to communicate with each other, and crucially, with Bloomberg's news desk and support.
Building the community.
It wasn't just about selling a data box. It was about building a network, a community, and an integrated workflow, all centered around the terminal.
That's where the genius of the ecosystem model truly shines, as described in the material. It wasn't just selling a single product. He created a powerful form of lock-in.
Sticky. Very sticky.
The more functions a user relied on within the terminal, the data, the analytics, the news, the messaging, the more deeply embedded they became and the more difficult it was to switch to a competitor. Firms weren't just buying a device, they were buying speed, clarity, connection, and an entire integrated workflow solution.
And the sources captured the unique culture that grew around the terminal itself. The distinctive color-coded keyboard with its dedicated function keys, the iconic HELP button that instantly connected you to human support staff, 2004,
That HLP key was legendary.
A revolutionary concept at the time.
Hmm.
The proprietary commands, like WEI for World Equity Indices or FA for financial analysis,
Yeah.
it wasn't just a piece of technology, it became a symbol of status, access, and professional necessity within the industry.
The business model built on this was spectacularly successful. Billions in annual revenue by the early 2000s, accounting for the vast majority, like 85% of Bloomberg LP's income,
All from those licenses.
generated through high-cost, recurring licensing fees with no reliance on advertising or being a publicly traded company.
It was a model built on delivering indispensable utility and charging a premium for it. And the sources note the design philosophy was telling. Function over beauty was paramount.
No frills.
While other tech companies might have prioritized sleek interfaces, Bloomberg built what the material calls a fortress of function. Speed, accuracy, and absolute reliability were non-negotiable in the high-stakes world of finance, and the terminal's design reflected that uncompromising focus.
And a counterintuitive strength emerged. The more volatile and uncertain the financial markets became, the more valuable the terminal was perceived to be.
Right. In chaos, clarity wins.
In times of chaos and crisis, clarity and real-time, reliable information become exponentially more critical.
That's a powerful observation from the material. The terminal thrived on the very market turbulence that might have undermined less essential systems. It became indispensable during moments of crisis, further cementing its position as the industry standard. Today, with over 350,000 active terminals globally, it remains the undisputed gold standard.
So the key lesson from this section is about creating an institution, not just a product. It's about stitching yourself so deeply into the operational fabric of an industry by solving a fundamental, timeless problem.
Becoming essential.
That you become essential infrastructure. This leads to market domination, not just competition within an existing category.
It's about identifying a core, persistent need that isn't going away and building the definitive, indispensable solution for it, making yourself a necessary utility rather than a discretionary purchase.
Thinking about that for your own field or area of work, what is a timeless problem that you see others might just accept as the cost of doing business? How could you approach that problem by building something essential, something that becomes infrastructure for others, rather than just another competitive product or service in a crowded market?
It definitely prompts you to look for those foundational needs, not just superficial ones.
But Michael Bloomberg didn't stop with just the data infrastructure. Having built the engine room, he made a strategic move to go beyond providing raw numbers and charts.
Moving up the value chain.
He wanted to control the interpretation of that data to shape the narrative and influence opinion within the financial world. This led to the expansion of his enterprise into building a global media empire alongside the terminal.
This was a conscious, strategic evolution of the business model, beginning in the 1990s. The sources indicate Bloomberg's ambition extended beyond simply being the pipes for financial information. He wanted to be involved in how that information was analyzed, reported, and understood.
Not just data, but context.
He wasn't content with just a software and data company. He aimed to build a comprehensive information and influence business.
The first major step in this direction was the launch of Bloomberg News in 1990. The mission, as described in the material, was bold: to deliver breaking financial news, deep insights, and market-moving stories faster and more accurately than the established giants like the Wall Street Journal or Reuters.
Taking on the big guys.
It was about applying the same speed and precision of the terminal to journalism.
And the brilliance was the seamless integration with the core product. Bloomberg News wasn't designed as standalone content. It was conceived as a vital business tool, directly integrated into the terminal interface.
Right there on the screen.
Every article, headline, analyst forecast, economic report was instantly accessible to users within their data environment. This allowed finance professionals to react to market-moving news in real time, often milliseconds ahead of competitors relying on slower, traditional news feeds, all without ever having to leave the Bloomberg platform.
This was followed by the launch of Bloomberg TV in 1994, providing 24/7 financial news and market coverage.
Taking it to the airwaves.
The sources point out the very deliberate focus of the television channel. It was laser targeted at finance professionals, investors, decision makers. It focused solely on markets, economics, business news, consciously avoiding the entertainment or general political coverage common on other networks.
All business, all the time,
Yeah.
serving that core customer.
It was all about serving that same core, high-value customer base with tailored, relevant information across multiple formats. The ecosystem continued to grow with Bloomberg Radio, the significant acquisition of Businessweek magazine in 2009,
Adding that long-form depth.
which added long-form journalism and a different audience touchpoint, and platforms like Bloomberg Opinion for expert analysis and commentary.
So you had data, news, TV, radio, print, opinion. A full stack.
This created what the material accurately describes as brilliant vertical integration. Bloomberg LP had the core data and analytics platform, the Terminal, the breaking news operation, Bloomberg News, and multiple distribution channels, terminal interface, TV, radio, digital platforms.
And the synergy was immense. Each piece reinforced and enhanced the value of the others. A breaking story reported by Bloomberg News could be immediately analyzed using the data and tools on the terminal,
Instant context.
providing immediate context and actionability. A segment on Bloomberg TV might highlight a specific market trend or function on the terminal, driving users to explore it. Content shared across the various platforms consistently pointed back to the depth and reliability rooted in the terminal's data. It became a self-reinforcing information loop.
This comprehensive approach gave him a kind of hidden power, as the sources suggest. By controlling the foundational data, and also controlling a significant portion of the narrative and interpretation of that data, he gained immense influence within the world of finance and beyond.
But that influence wasn't built on manipulation. The sources repeatedly stressed that in the financial information business, trust is the ultimate product.
Accuracy is everything.
Bloomberg's reputation and the value of his media empire were built on an uncompromising commitment to accuracy, precision, and verifiable reporting. Every article, every analysis, every headline had to be correct. That was non-negotiable.
Which is why, the material notes, he made massive investments in journalism at a time when many traditional media outlets were scaling back.
Swimming against the tide.
He hired thousands of journalists worldwide, establishing over 150 bureaus. This wasn't just about having a news arm. It was about ensuring the quality and breadth of reporting necessary to feed the ecosystem and maintain the trust the brand was built upon. He doubled down on investigative reporting and data journalism because precision reporting was fundamental to his value proposition.
And his unique funding model provided a significant advantage here. The high-margin recurring revenue generated from the terminal licenses subsidized and funded the extensive high-quality news operation.
The terminals paid for the news.
His journalists weren't under the same pressure to chase clicks or sensationalism driven by advertising models. Their primary directive was accurate, high-quality reporting that served the core audience. This allowed them to focus on depth and speed without compromising integrity.
So the key lesson here is really strategic. Instead of trying to sell one product, the terminal, to a vast, undifferentiated market, he focused intensely on one high-value customer segment, the financial professional, and built many integrated products and services specifically for them.
Exactly. He anticipated their needs, streamlined their workflow, and wove all these disparate information streams into a seamless, integrated experience that made his platform indispensable.
And when you succeed in embedding yourself so deeply into your customers' daily workflow and thinking process, you stop being just a vendor.
You become part of the furniture.
Yeah.
Essential.
You become essential infrastructure, a necessary utility. That's how he transformed from simply selling terminals into owning a significant portion of the conversation and information flow in global finance.
It's a powerful strategy of deep vertical integration centered entirely around serving the comprehensive needs of a specific, valuable audience.
Thinking about this for your own work or business, how can you move beyond just selling a product or service and integrate more deeply into your customer's entire workflow? How can your content, your related offerings, or your support structure reinforce your core offering and make you not just useful, but truly indispensable to your target audience?
It definitely requires a holistic view of the customer's entire operational landscape, doesn't it?
Building something this pervasive, this deeply integrated, and this influential requires a very specific, often intense, internal culture and leadership style.
Oh, absolutely. The culture is key.
The sources extensively describe the environment at Bloomberg LP as one where excellence isn't treated as optional, it's rigorously enforced.
Yes, the Bloomberg way is characterized as intensely demanding, data-driven, and at times described as unforgiving by those who weren't a fit, but ultimately built on an uncompromising commitment to the highest professional standards. The fundamental philosophy is that achieving and maintaining excellence requires constant vigilance and rigorous execution.
Accountability is central to this culture from day one. The
Mhm.
material highlights that the company was structurally designed to run on metrics and accountability.
Everything measured.
Nearly every aspect of performance is tracked, and employees' output is measurable. The message is clear. There's no place to hide from performance expectations.
That transparency of performance data is deliberate. It removes ambiguity about expectations and forces a constant focus on results. And it directly ties back to the famous open floor workspace we discussed earlier.
Right, back to the open office.
The sources clarify again that this wasn't a superficial architectural trend. It was profoundly functional. It facilitated immediate access to colleagues and information, promoted speed, and, crucially, sent a clear, constant message from the top. No one is above the work.
Him sitting right there.
Bloomberg himself, sitting in the open office among his employees, is a powerful embodiment of this principle.
The culture is often described using words like relentless. Meetings are short, purposeful, expected to drive action. Ideas are judged solely on their merit and data, not on the title or seniority of the person proposing them.
Meritocracy, data-driven.
The sources note you could be cut off in a meeting if you were unprepared, or replaced if you consistently couldn't deliver.
High stakes. While this has led to critics sometimes calling the environment harsh, Bloomberg's perspective, as presented in the material, is that this intensity is simply realistic and necessary for success in high-stakes, fast-moving industries like finance and real-time media.
The nature of the beast.
You must be fast, you must be right, and you must be ready to execute at a high level every single day because the cost of errors or delays is immense.
But the sources also provide a more nuanced picture, highlighting that while the demands are high, Bloomberg also invests significantly in his people. They receive top-tier benefits, continuous training,
Right, it wasn't just stick, there was carrot too.
and opportunities for rapid growth and advancement are available for high performers.
Yes, the material suggests there's a bargain. The expectation for results is uncompromising. But employees are provided with the resources, tools, and potential career trajectory to meet those expectations if they can perform. The sources note that the culture encourages employees to compete not against each other in a destructive way, but against what's possible,
Pushing the envelope.
pushing the boundaries of what they can achieve. This forward-looking mindset is presented as the only way to stay ahead in a competitive world. Bloomberg's quote shared in the material is very direct. You can't allow complacency to creep in. The moment you do, someone hungrier will pass you.
One of the most often cited examples of his distinctive approach to culture and efficiency was the famous decision to eliminate internal email within the company.
The no email rule seems
I mean,
wild.
it seems almost paradoxical for a data and communication giant.
The sources explain the rationale. Bloomberg believed that traditional internal email systems were inefficient, slowed down communication, created silos of information, and buried critical details in long threads. He saw it as a barrier to rapid, transparent information flow.
So what did they use?
So instead, he commissioned the building of a proprietary internal communication system that mirrored the functionality of the terminal itself. It was designed to be fast, fully searchable by everyone, and transparent across relevant teams, ensuring information moves freely and quickly within the organization, just as it did externally. It was about optimizing internal processes with the same rigor applied to their external product.
This all points to the core essence of his leadership style described in the material. A relentless focus on identifying and fixing slow processes immediately, addressing individuals who are hindering team performance decisively, and acting today if a decision can be made today.
Bias for action. Strong bias.
A strong bias for immediate, decisive action.
That sense of urgency and intolerance for delay defines the operating tempo of the company. The sources describe it as maintaining a startup intensity, even with tens of thousands of employees, a mindset of staying paranoid, never assuming their market-leading position is permanently secure, and always pushing to improve and innovate.
Never resting on laurels.
And this culture, these standards, they flow directly from the top. Managers are expected to lead with an owner's mindset. Engineers are encouraged to challenge existing systems to find better ways. Editors are expected to fact-check with extreme diligence. Precision in the Bloomberg universe is directly equated with power and success.
And the sources underscore that Bloomberg models this excellence himself, even now in his 80s.
Still walking the floor.
He is still described as working long hours, actively reviewing reports, walking the floor, and engaging directly. He doesn't just set the standards, he embodies them daily, demonstrating that the commitment to excellence is not something he delegates.
Leading from the front. literally.
Which brings us to a crucial lesson that emerges from looking at this culture. Standards aren't merely what you state, they are what you tolerate.
That's a powerful line. What you tolerate.
To build a genuinely high-performance environment or achieve high performance in your own work, you must be the first to show up with rigor, the last to compromise on quality, and the one who consistently holds the line on expectations.
It's leadership defined by clarity and demand, not comfort or popularity. The sources suggest that while charm or flexibility might be valued in other contexts, in building something as dominant and precise as Bloomberg LP, discipline, structure, and uncompromising standards are the factors that ultimately prevail.
So reflecting on this demanding culture, what are the standards you tolerate in your own work, in your team, or in your projects? How could leading by example, by embodying the standards you wish to see, even if it's just leading yourself, transform your efforts and the outcomes you achieve?
A challenging self-assessment, for sure, but one that aligns with building for true excellence.
Finally, let's step back and look beyond the accumulation of billions and the construction of the empire itself. The sources frame Michael Bloomberg as being ultimately driven by a profound sense of impact and purpose,
Moving beyond the money.
arguing that success and wealth only truly matter if they are actively used to move the world forward.
This is a critical element that elevates his story beyond just a business narrative, I think. The core philosophy, articulated in the material, is that you cannot simply stop once you achieve success. You can't sit still, the quote goes. You always have to be growing, learning, and giving back.
This view means that growth isn't seen as having a finish line you arrive at. The business itself continued its relentless expansion into new areas like advanced analytics, financial software, global data collection, even after achieving market dominance.
Never satisfied.
The mindset is captured by another quote, "If you're not changing, you're falling behind." Constant evolution is embedded in the ethos.
And importantly, the sources note that amid all this continuous growth and expansion of the business, he actively integrated and maintained his core values of transparency, data-driven decision-making, and a sense of responsibility.
Values weren't sacrificed for growth.
It wasn't just about accumulating more, it was about building in a way that aligned with a broader, positive purpose.
And this leads directly to his truly remarkable philanthropy. The sources highlight him as one of the most generous living philanthropists globally, having donated over $17.4 billion to date.
Staggering numbers. And his approach to philanthropy mirrors his approach to business. It's strategic, data-driven, and focused on measurable impact.
Philanthropy as investment.
Bloomberg Philanthropies operates with the same rigor applied to building the terminal. Every initiative is carefully tracked, and every dollar is measured for its effectiveness and leverage in creating change. It's philanthropy treated as a form of high-impact investment rather than passive charity.
The scale of his giving is immense. The sources note he donated $3.7 billion in 2024 alone, which is more than any other individual in the United States.
Just incredible scale.
And the material gives a powerful, concrete example that illustrates his strategic focus. The transformative $1 billion gift to Johns Hopkins University, his alma mater, specifically earmarked to enable free medical education for low-income students.
Leveling the playing field.
His stated reason encapsulates his approach. Talent is universal. Opportunity is not.
That reason perfectly illustrates the underlying philosophy, identifying systemic barriers and investing substantial resources to remove them, thereby investing in future problem solvers regardless of their economic background.
Yeah, and the types of initiatives Bloomberg Philanthropies supports global campaigns against smoking, efforts to reduce traffic fatalities in cities worldwide, initiatives promoting clean energy transitions in developing nations, they're all focused on tackling major global challenges.
Big, thorny problems.
With the goal of achieving scalable, sustainable change, not just providing temporary relief.
The sources suggest his giving reflects his core personality and approach to problems. It's practical, urgent, and intensely results-oriented. And his well-known quote, "The purpose of life is not to be the richest person in the cemetery, it's to make the world better while you're here,"
Sums it up well.
resonates deeply with this section, articulating a motivation that extends far beyond personal wealth accumulation.
It speaks to a fusion of intense ambition in building his enterprise with a powerful sense of altruism and responsibility to contribute to public good.
And crucially, he didn't wait until he retired to begin giving back or pursuing impact.
Didn't wait for someday.
He integrated giving, public service, like his time as mayor, where he famously donated his salary for 3 terms and applied data-driven governance to transform NYC, and purpose directly into his active journey of building and leading.
And the sense of purpose wasn't just an external activity. The sources imply it was infused into the company culture itself, promoting ethics, transparency, and a sense that the work being done had broader significance in enabling efficient global markets.
Right, the purpose wasn't separate. The impact isn't only external philanthropy, it's also embedded in the values and function of the organization.
Ultimately, the core insight here, as drawn from the sources, is that true, lasting wealth and significance aren't just about what you accumulate for yourself, they are about what you enable others to build and the positive change you enable in the world.
Being useful, as you said.
Bloomberg aimed to be useful, not just rich. He built indispensable tools, funded transformative policies, and created systems designed to have an impact that extends far beyond his own lifetime. And he did it all without waiting for a perfect time or a moment of retirement.
Acting now.
Which leaves us with that powerful final lesson from this part of the deep dive. Don't wait to give back, to lead, or to make a difference. Integrate purpose and impact into your journey right now from the very beginning. Success, in this view, is measured not just by the heights you reach, but by how deeply you leave your mark on the world around you.
It fundamentally redefines the metrics of achievement, doesn't it?
And for you listening, that raises the question, how can you begin to integrate purpose, impact, or giving back into your journey right now, today, rather than waiting for some future milestone? What kind of mark do you want to leave, and what small, consistent steps can you take towards that starting this week?
Something to seriously contemplate.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So pulling all of this together from our deep dive into the sources, Michael Bloomberg's story is a powerful case study, not just in building immense wealth, but in constructing a global empire forged from a moment of unexpected rejection.
From fired to foundational.
We've seen 5 core principles consistently at play throughout his journey. The power of relentless, unwavering discipline, the profound resilience required to turn setbacks into strategic pivots, the importance of creating essential infrastructure-level value creation through problem solving, the impact of leading through uncompromising high standards, and the ultimate drive provided by purpose-driven impact that extends beyond personal gain.
He didn't start with inherited advantage at the top of the financial world. His path was one of rigorous effort, sharp observation, strategic thinking, and courageous action, forged in the aftermath of being unexpectedly fired. From an engineer and executive, he redefined and reshaped the entire flow of financial information globally.
The core takeaway isn't about replicating his exact path or scale, but understanding the underlying principles. Success, as illuminated by these sources, doesn't require you to start at the very top or avoid all setbacks.
It's about how you respond.
It comes from consistently showing up with discipline, staying intensely curious about problems others accept as unavoidable, making bold bets when opportunity presents itself, and taking decisive action aligned with your values and a larger purpose. If you apply these principles, the material suggests you will build something significant and you will rise.
Because, in the end, as the sources compellingly argue, success isn't just about how much you acquire or how high you climb. It's fundamentally about the lasting, positive mark you leave on the world.
Which leaves us with this final provocative thought to sit with, drawn directly from everything we've explored today. If consistency in action is indeed more important than simply being the smartest person in the room, and if true success is measured by the positive mark you leave on the world, what is one small, consistent action you could commit to taking this week that directly aligns with the positive mark you want to leave?
A powerful bridge between insight and action. Food for thought.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. We hope exploring Michael Bloomberg's extraordinary journey and the principles that underpinned it has offered you some valuable insights and maybe even shifted your perspective on discipline, resilience in the face of setbacks, and what it truly means to build something of lasting significance.
Thanks for exploring this material with us. These deep dives are designed to give you knowledge and insight distilled directly from the source, helping you become well-informed efficiently.
Until the next time we take a deep dive into something fascinating.